Hello and welcome to another Game of Thrones review here, and today we're going to be reviewing last night's episode of Game of Thrones Season 7, Episode 4, called The Spoils of War. Now this is a spoiler review, so obviously consider yourselves warned on all things spoilers for just this episode. I'm not talking about the little preview for next episode either, just this episode. So yeah, definitely steer clear of this video if you have not seen the episode. But before I get into the actual review, I want to say don't be afraid to hit that subscribe button if you enjoy this and want to see more videos like this in the future. With that being said, let's get into the review. So let's start off where the episode starts off with a quick couple episodes having to do with the Lannisters, or not a quick couple. So the episode starts off with you have Jaime and Bronn, and they're both talking. They're both walking away from High Garden, and they're pretty much talking about what happened. And you have Bronn, who is being Bronn and being really cool the way the way he normally is, and you have him talking about, hey, where's my castle? Because Jaime promised him a castle, and you have Bronn like, I want a castle, and then he turns around and you see High Garden in the background. And he's like, what about that one? And then Jaime's like, you know what? That you might not want that castle because Daenerys Targaryen can come and take it tomorrow if she really wanted to. That's just how war goes. And so you have them talk a little bit about what's going on back in King's Landing, and then you cut over to King's Landing and you have Cersei talking to Mycroft. I don't know the actual character's name, but he's Mycroft in Sherlock Holmes, or Sherlock. So you have her talking to him from the Iron Bank, and it's actually a really good scene because you have them two talking, and then the dude Mycroft is like, "Hey, we'll back you. We'll give you some more money when thank you. We'll give you some more money when the gold comes here because they're taking back their Jaime and Bronn are taking a lot of the gold back from High Garden to King's Landing, and so you have Mycroft is like, yeah, I'll back you, man. I'll back you, Cersei. You're doing really well. Like you're actually doing a lot better. It was pretty cool because he's like, you know what? I don't think we've ever had such a large sum of money repaid in one day. And then he was like, you know what, Cersei, I'll back you because you seem to know what you're doing even more than Tywin Lannister did. And that was just a really good scene because it was like, yeah, we'll back you when you get the gold back here to King's Landing and when we get our payment due. And it was a really good scene. Those two were really short scenes because they wanted to get to Winterfell and the battle. Oh my goodness, the battle. But yeah, that's pretty much where this episode started off with. In Winterfell, and we have a nice little discussion between Littlefinger and Brand. And what happens in this discussion is Littlefinger's doing his not quite manipulating, but he's kind of giving his whole "hey, I'm with you" kind of shtick, and he gives Bran the dagger, the Valyrian steel dagger that was used to try to kill him. And what he says something about chaos, and then you have this absolutely great little line that Bran says, and he says, chaos is a ladder, which is actually what Littlefinger said to Varys, I think way back in season 3. Way back in season 3. And then you have Littlefinger. I mean, the guy, Peter Baelish, that actor just does an amazing job with this little scene right here, because as soon as Bran says chaos is a ladder to him, that he just like, oh Johnny, because you see it in his face. It's like a close-up on Littlefinger, and then you see his face totally change to one of, oh my goodness, this kid knows exactly what I'm talking about. This kid has seen stuff that I don't want him to have seen. So it could be that could be the first step to Littlefinger betraying the Starks, which he has been known to do before. So that could either be that, or that could be maybe later on we have Bran telling Arya that, hey, Littlefinger's kind of the one that started the whole death of our family, and that might put Littlefinger on Arya's list. And actually, is no, I don't think he's on her list now, but that could put her on her list because maybe Bran would tell her what happened. Um, and I think that scene in particular was really cool because you have Littlefinger trying to do his stuff, but Bran is like, "Hey, I I've seen it all before. Like, I literally seen it all before, and he knows exactly what he's doing." And after that, you have Mira, who is the girl that has pretty much helped Bran survive for this long, and you have her coming in, and she pretty much says, "Hey, when the White Walkers come, I want to be with my family, like that. So I'm gonna head out." And Bran is like, "Thanks." It's so just stone faced, so cold from Bran that he's just like, "Thank you, like, good, way to go," and bye. And it's an amazing thing because she's even like, "That's it." Like I literally ruined my life for you, and I get a thank you. Maybe a hug would be nice, Give me a horse so I can leave on. You know what I'm saying? Like it's just it shows that, and I that's something that I liked when we have Arya come in later on, where you have Arya who has been kind of the stone faced, no emotions. I'm just gonna kill you if you're in my way, that kind of person. Arya has been that, and now when she gets back to Winterfell, as we see in the next scene, she gets happy. Like, she's actually happy to be at Winterfell. She's showing emotions again, which was cool because she's not just that. She's not that lone wolf, like that's probably why she said that's not you last episode, because she's not that lone that wolf that will just leave and never come back again. She has a absolute connection to this place, and then when she meets with Sansa, it's like, oh my goodness. And all before that, when she comes up to the gates of Winterfell, you guys, it's so funny. Those two guards are like, they're just amazing. They're funny. They have great chemistry. I think that those two guys were probably like, if there weren't dragons in this episode, those two guys would be like the small highlights. But that was cool. And then you have Arya and Sansa having their reunion, and like I was saying before, you have Arya, who was the stone faced, and now she's becoming more human again, I guess you would call it. And then on juxtaposed to that, you have Bran, who was human, who had the emotions and things like that, and now he is absolutely a statue. So it's cool to see those two characters pretty much flipping their whole demeanor. And that the reunion between Arya and Sansa is pretty cool. Like, you get the feels, but it's cool. I like that they didn't use music in that, because like, if you use music, yeah, it could get you into it, but if you don't use music, then it shows that, hey, this is all about these characters. This is all about these characters not being like, oh my goodness, running into each other's arms. They do hug, but it's like, hey, they both have grown up a lot since they last saw each other, and they've been through a lot, so they're not going to be like little children anymore. And then Arya goes to meet Bran, and it's cool because Bran gives Arya the Valyrian steel dagger, because he's like, I Peter Baelish gave it to me. And Sansa's like, wait, what? Peter Baelish gave it to you? Hold on. If Peter Baelish gave something to you, then that means he wants something from you in return. And then Bran is like, well, it doesn't matter. And then it's funny because Bran's like, it doesn't matter. And Sansa's like, well, yeah, it kind of matters. And Bran's like, no, it doesn't, because I don't want this. It's funny because Bran just gives it to Arya, and he's like, here, you can have it. I don't need it. And so it seems like Bran is not going for Littlefinger's stuff at all. And it was funny because it was like Sansa was trying to say, no, this is a serious thing, and then Bran's like, yeah, I know, but I don't want it, so I'm not gonna give Peter Baelish anything back for it. And then you have Arya Stark telling them a little bit about her list of Cersei, and who most of the people on her list are dead now, but she doesn't know that the the Hound is still alive, and you have after that it just cuts to Brienne of Tarth and Podrick. They're sparring, and Arya comes in, and oh my goodness, you guys, Arya has got a cool outfit, and she comes in and she starts sparring with Brienne of Tarth, and she absolutely holds her own. In fact, I think she might have beaten Brienne of Tarth, but it was just so cool because you have them sparring, and then Arya's doing her, her, what do we say, to death, not today, that kind of thing. And then you have one time Brienne just kicks her right in the chest, kicks her, puts her on her back, and Arya does like this little. It's such like a little like a Bruce Lee kung fu thing where you put your legs up, you flip around, and then you land on your feet. It's pretty awesome, and it just shows that Arya can not only dish out, but she can take some hits and she can keep going. It was a great scene between two characters who are good at fighting, and they have a very mutual respect for each other. Let's move over to Dragonstone for a bit, and here when they first show us Dragonstone, we have Dany and Missandei start to talk about Grey Worm and what happened that last night before Grey Worm left, which is quickly interrupted by Jon Snow, and he pretty much wants to show Dany some cave drawings of men and the children of the forest fighting the White Walkers. Now, and this is in a cave where the dragon glass is, and you have Dany saying, okay, definitely White Walkers are real, no doubt about it. I will fight for you, Jon Snow. I will fight with you to defend the North and to defend Westeros against the White Walkers. And then she's like, after you bend the knee. And it's still like, she's still a little bit hard-headed, but it's okay because Jon's like, hey, my people are not gonna, they're not gonna allow me to, they're not going to serve a southern ruler again because of, they've been burned, figuratively speaking, like 3 times in a row, pretty much. That's pretty much what happened. They've been burned by people from the south, so he's like, nope, not gonna happen. Well, and then Dany gives him like this nice little speech about they're your people, they trust you to lead them and to show them the correct way, and you have her pretty much being like, hey, if you do it, they're probably going to follow you because they absolutely believe in you 100%. And then you have Tyrion like being like, hey, you guys, something bad happened. And you have Tyrion and Varys, excuse me, talking about what happened with Grey Worm, how they're kind of stuck like in a tight spot. And then you have, They tell them about the Tyrells, and Dany now is pretty ticked off because she's like, hey, Tyrion, our plan isn't working. Like, we got to do something different. I got to use my dragons or something because all of my allies are being taken out. And she kind of gets mad and she's like, Jon, you're staying here because I need my allies. And you're staying here until you become my ally. That's pretty much what she said without saying that. And then she like looks over to Jon and she's like, what do I do? And Jon's like, you know what? I didn't think the dragons were real, but now I see them out there flying. You've done stuff that's impossible, but if you do start burning down cities and melting castles, people are not going to root for you. Like, they're going to be absolutely afraid of you, even more than the Mad King. And so that's pretty much where that conversation ends. And then we have another scene that's somewhere else, and we come back to Jon and Davos. They're talking about Dany, and it's like, it's kind of funny because it's like, dude, that's your aunt. Like, don't talk about them. And Davos is kind of teasing Jon about, hey, have you've been staring at her kind of a lot. And Jon's like, yeah, be quiet. And then they happen upon Missandei. And Missandei asks them about, your name is Jon Snow, but your dad's a Stark. And then Jon's like, it's because my dad was not married to my blood mother. And then Missandei's like, you know what? In Tarth, we don't have marriage, so the idea of an illegitimate child doesn't exist. And I thought that was pretty cool because, like, yeah, of course people are gonna have different beliefs and different ways of doing things in different countries and different cultures. And they talk. John and Davos start talking about Danny, and we have Missandei saying all the good things about Danny, you know, how she helped, how she's not like her dad, the Mad King, how she's actually a good person, and how instead of her conquering Essos, she pretty much, like, everybody who's following her now chose her as their queen, because it wasn't just like I have the biggest army, so I'm the king now. No, people chose Danny as their queen, and it's kind of like, oh, okay. So we get John and Davos getting more understanding about, okay, Danny's not such a bad person. She's not like her dad. She's a good queen. She's a very good leader, and it might not be such a bad thing to bend the knee to her. And then you have a Theon Greyjoy returning by not by himself, but with one ship. And oh man, it's such a powerful scene because you have him and Jon, and he thought that Jon was, he didn't know that Jon was still alive. And Jon said the same thing about him because Davos is like, you know what? We heard that your uncle attacked your fleet, and we thought you were dead. And Theon's very he's very knowledgeable about his position and what he is, and so he's like, you know what? I should have been dead. I should be dead right now, but I'm not. So I came here to ask Danny to help me get my sister back. And then Jon like it's so powerful. Jon just grabs him by his shirt, pulls him closer, and he's like, the only reason I'm not killing you right now is because of what you did for Sansa. And it was such a good scene to where, yeah, and Theon's not trying to get out. He's not trying to like argue with Jon. He knows that he did bad things, and he's probably thankful that Jon isn't trying to kill him right now, because Jon could probably kill him. And Theon's not one of the characters, but Theon is a very good character, and Theon's a very well thought out character because he knows exactly what he's done, and he knows probably exactly what he deserves, and he's absolutely aware of all that stuff. But it was a very powerful scene to see them two just staring each other down, and Theon knowing that Jon Snow is kind of the man now, and that Theon is just a chump at this point. So finally we get to the battle. One of the best battles that we have seen, not in terms of like, hey, these two sides are evenly matched. One of the best battles because we finally see a dragon in action against an army, and it in Westeros finally, and it's so glorious. I mean, the way this battle starts off, you just have Bronn and Jaime talking, and then Dickon comes over, and Jaime's like, Rickon, right? And then he's like, nope, Dickon. And then it's so good because you have Bronn just starts laughing, and it's like a duh. That's exactly what the audience does kind of every time the dude says his name. And so it's like, yep, this guy is pretty awesome. Bronn is so cool. And that's one thing I like. There are a few times in this episode where Bronn looks like he could have died, and I'm so happy that he didn't. Sure, you gotta kind of like keep Jaime alive, but hey, that it is what it is, because you can't have him die 4 episodes in. That would be amazing. That's such a Game of Thrones thing to do, but they didn't do it this time. But you have them talking, and then you have Dickon and Jaime talking, and then Bronn. You just start hearing the horse's footsteps or hoofs. You start hearing the footsteps of the horses. And it's so good because Bronn is the first one to hear it, and he's like, wait, hold on, shut up, listen. and then you just start hearing it. And it's very soft, it's very subtle, and then you just see Jamie turn around and he looks at the hills, and you don't see the. It's amazing because you don't see the Dothraki horde coming over the hill. At that point, it just shows a shot of the hill, and then you hear the footsteps of the horses, and it's so good because he's like, oh Johnny, yo, get a shield wall, like shields and spears, let's line up, let's get this ready. And then it's so good because once you finally see the Dothraki, like the hill is so far away that you just see like small little horses, like little dots. You can't really tell what they are, but you just see them coming over, and then it cuts to the Dothraki horde, and it's up close, and then you just see a bunch of them on horses, and it's so good because you see, it's amazing because you have Bronn, who is like the smartest person there in the battle, because he turns to Jamie and is like, hey dude, get out of here, go to King's Landing. You see all those people, like 100,000 of them, they're totally gonna wreck us because they all have swords and we're on foot for the most part. And Bronn's like, dude, get out of here. And Jamie's like, no. And it's amazing because you hear, just like with the footsteps of the horses, you hear Drogal, you hear his screech, his scream, whatever you want to call it, his roar, if you will. And then it's like, oh Johnny, because they do have one of those big crossbows, but they only got one, and it's like, oh my goodness, because you just see the face that Jamie gives, and it's so good. I mean, that dude did such an amazing job in this episode. But you hear the roar, and then they're like, oh, that's not good. And then it's so cool because you could have had just like a shot, like an up close shot of Dany on the dragon, and then you see him come over the hill, but instead they have the dragon just like boom, like just appear through the clouds over the Dothraki, and it's so cool because you don't see him, and then boom, clouds move, and you see Drogal, and it's so cool. I just think that this episode does an amazing job. This might be like one of the best. Like, I still think the Battle of the Bastards is great, but I think that this battle is probably like the second coolest battle in my opinion, just because like that, just the one shot of Drogal coming through the clouds is so awesome. And then after that I was like, oh, is Jamie gonna run now? No, he stays for the entire battle. Like, he stays, he almost gets burned up, and it's so cool because like you have the Dothraki running, and then you just see Dany on Drogal, and Dany with Drogal burns like a big, like a line through the shield wall that the Lannister army has. And then you have the Dothraki just going, and they're taking out the Lannister army. It's so awesome. Like, it's so good, and it's so exciting to finally see a dragon fighting in Westeros. Like, I can't even tell you. I was like jumping out of my seat, clapping. I was like fist pumping. Everything you could imagine. I was so happy just to finally see a dragon fighting in Westeros. And what happens in the end of the episode is you have Jamie telling Bronn, hey, go get that crossbow and go take out Drogal. And what happens is he doesn't take out Drogal. No, he shoots Drogal, but he shoots Drogal in the shoulder, and so it doesn't kill him. And what happens is, like, he gets on a horse, and you think that Bronn is going to run away, but what happens is, since he shot Drogal in the shoulder, Drogal kind of lands, and then you have Dany. She gets off. She tries to take the bolt out, and you see Jamie, and he like grabs a spear, and he pretty much like goes after Dany. It's so cool. And then you have at the very last second, you see Drogal turn his head, open his mouth. You see the fire start to come out, and it cuts to Jamie, and he's running next to like a little pond or a lake. I think it's a lake, but he's running next to the lake along the kind of the shoreline of the lake towards Dany. And at the very last second, like, the fire is coming at Jamie, and at the very last possible moment, you have Bronn jump and go from his horse, tackle Jamie off of Jamie's horse, and then they went into the river or the lake. And then the last shots are them two kind of sinking down to the bottom of the lake because they have armor. Well, Braun doesn't have armor, but Jamie has armor, so he's sinking down. And the last shot is just you have Jamie, he's sinking down, just like arms held out like this, legs, arms held out like this, and he's just sinking. And it looks like, I mean, I know that Jamie's not going to die, because if they were going to kill Jamie in this episode, they would have killed him by having Drogal burn him up. But they didn't. They had Bronn save him. So most likely Bronn is going to swim down there, get him, take him to the other side of the lake. But I was like, wait, hold on. Tyrion is here, because Tyrion sees Jamie looking at Dany, and he's like, "Flee, you fool." It's kind of like the Gandalf thing from Lord of the Rings. "Fly, you fools." And he's like, "Flee, you fool." And then Tyrion sees what happens. So I'm like, hey, Tyrion, why don't you just tell your Dothraki horde to not let anybody get out of this little lake or river or whatever it is? I know it's a body of water, but why don't you just tell them, hey, there's a prisoner in there, and if he comes out, we should definitely get him as a prisoner. And then that helps a lot, because I'm pretty sure the Tarly father, I think it's Robert Tarly, or I forget his name, but the Tarly father, Dickon's dad, I think he's dead because he was in that battle. I don't know about Dickon, he might be alive, but this was an amazing episode, and I think that battle was one of the best battles of all time. And we did see that the crossbows can and will hurt the dragons. Bringing this review to a close, I think that this is one of the best, absolute best episodes, bar none, of all of Game of Thrones, because you have reunions. You don't see the White Walkers, you don't see Samwell Tarly, which actually I could do without, because it seems like Samwell Tarly is not really getting anywhere. So I could do without him doing stuff and then not getting promotions or not getting really anywhere in his whole Maester school stuff. So I'm okay with them not showing us that. But I think that this episode is really cool because you have the reunions, you have an amazing battle, you have good character development, even with Jon and Dany starting to understand where the other one is coming from and starting to understand what the other one wants. And you have just an amazing battle. And I mean, dragons. I mean, I know we didn't get all three dragons, which would have been godlike, but we did get Drogal, and we did get dragons destroying the Lannister armies, which is always a plus. So this episode is definitely one of the best episodes that I've seen in Game of Thrones. So yes, definitely check this episode out. And this is only the start of the discussion, so I want to know what you think about this episode. Tell me your thoughts in the comment section down below. Tell me what you think, if Dickon's still alive, if they're going to capture Jaime Lannister as a hostage, or as a prisoner. Tell me what you think is going to happen in next week's episodes, because I didn't see the preview for next week's episode. So hey, just speculation. Don't tell me what happens in the preview, because I don't really want to know what happens in the preview. Just tell me your speculation of things that could happen but you haven't seen in the preview. But yeah, that's my review of Game of Thrones Season 7, Episode 4, called The Spoils of War. And I think this is a great episode, and I'm super excited for next episode. I'm kind of sad that we only have 3 episodes left, but hey, we're just getting Game of Thrones back, and so I'm just happy for that. So like I said, leave a comment, and if you really enjoy this video and want to see more videos like this every Monday, when day after Game of Thrones comes out or airs, until Game of Thrones is done. Oh, please don't end. Until Game of Thrones is the season is over, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and hit that little bell next to the subscribe button. It'll notify you every time I put up a new one of these reviews for you. And thank you for watching this one.